Chapter 14. The New Girl. Cupcake had lost track of the number of times they had worked together to make a gingerbread house. Basic math would say that they had been married for more than 10 years, and that should be just about the same number of houses that they had made. But if the truth were known, there had been more than that. Sometimes they made several in a year. Some years they had worked late into the night and early the next morning in their efforts to meet deadlines. Sometimes they had finished their work and collapsed right there in the morning sunlight that came into the big picture window. They had let it wash over them as they slumbered together in its warmth. A smile lifted from her as she thought of all their little tricks, of all the little practice motions they had learned to employ when working together. They become more than just habits. They expanded to become almost like traditions. As those years sped by, they remained there, ready for one another at all times, always able to feel the needs and fears and wants of the other, as though they just seemed to know what the other was thinking and feeling. It was the little things that mattered. Those signaled the way that their lives had melded so completely that just as they employed as they made these gingerbread houses proved it. That was the reason why the double frosting was sitting there inside her mind, the way it still sat upon his nose as they worked calling out to her. It was because it was new, something unexpected that was suddenly taking on a sort of meaning. She knew it was remarkably silly to feel that way, but as the morning began to fade and the gingerbread house neared completion, she felt herself contemplating it more, wondering what it truly meant they had not removed it. She smiled a little smile and went back to finishing up the gingerbread house. The stage directions would once again read that time had moved forward, but that the scene had not changed. Time had settled around the ponies that had played in both rounds of the game of this, and soon almost a decade had flown by. For some players, the change had been obvious. Almost a decade had turned the nephew and nieces of Carrot and Cupcake, Ruby's children, into teenagers. They had perhaps stopped being cute, but they had grown up strong and smart. The oldest mare was studious and intellectual. Nicole the touch rowdy, the youngest mare a lover of art and music. For each had come a mark, the magic of the land displaying itself upon them, the seal of the sovereign. For Ivory Script, careful planning and hard work had paid off. Amid a wild celebration, she had won her first term as mayor, perhaps the youngest in the history of Ponyville. Not gonna lie, when I first read this, I was totally shocked that Ivory Script ended up being mayor. It was a total surprise, like, holy, you mean, really? And it was an awesome surprise. For the senior players, time had also moved as expected, and Ledger and his wife found themselves perhaps not so sprightly, perhaps more willing to let Trammell run things at the mill on certain days of the week. Cut cheesecake and wishing well seemed to be the fine time itself. As the two mares rebuilt their old friendship, it seemed as almost though it was fueling both of them. For Corey came new aches and pains. The old stallion saw more gray than black in his mane each time he looked in the mirror. But one of the principal actors, the two had sat upon that bed nearly a decade earlier, had promised to go on the journey together. For Carrot, life looked much different as he sat upon the precipice of his early 30s. He had struggled to make his bakery grow, yet it seemed that true prosperity had just remained out of reach. He could not complain. He was providing for them. More accurately, he was doing his part towards their plans and hopes. For Cupcake, life had not been as sad as he had feared it would be when she was sitting upon the examination table, using tissue after tissue. They were living for each other, each of the acts supporting the other. While they were hardly wealthy, she was happy, and the journey had taken them to amazing new places. Oh, by the way, I hope to all the changelings out there in the audience are enjoying this banquet that I've been giving through the past few weeks. I can imagine that you guys are going to be stuffed. They had traveled, seen faraway cities and even distant lands. They still received New Year's greetings from a delightful Patreon couple who had taken them on a month-long trip through Severia. They returned to that small village in the swamp many times. They kept good friends there who always sent gifts. Crates of oranges and citrus who arrived as each winter set in, the fruits a welcome addition to their goods to be sold in the bakery. But the greatest joy for her, and for Carrot, and been watching their nieces and nephew grow. Now they were adolescents, and their trips to Shikaku Corner were growing less frequent. The icebox store was starting to look rather bare, without the gifts that once been presented by smiling faces to a beaming aunt, uncle, and delighted aunt. Together they had been many places and seen many things. Through their struggles, they never stopped trying to be there for one another. They never stopped finding excuses to press their hopes together and draw a heart around the symbol they had created. Yet as their world had drawn into their second decade together, they could not help but wonder if there was some place they were supposed to be going on this journey. What was their expedition together going to discover? There was no way for them to know what there was a destination, that they were to the point where the strings of causality were being drawn. "Later, Grandpa!" called the colt, Corey barely even seeing his grandson flash out the door. The stallion turned to reply, but the door had already slammed shut, leaving him once more alone in the kitchen. "Later," he said to the empty room. He woke wishing well, and to his immense relief, he seemed to wish to walk today, her condition seeming to be at an ebb. It came and went, the battle between the magic steep within her, and as truces seemed to be called, he happily watched her regain something of her strength. Corey wished her a good day and gave her a kiss. With that, he was out the door and on his way to the office. The warm summer sun fell over the stallion as he walked along. He sneered, let it sit upon his face as he made his way out to the cobblestone streets. The expression was enough to send certain ponies who remembered the old quarry walking to the other side of the street. The expression was not meant to scare any pony. Instead, it was directed within. He was sneering at himself, cursing his old joints did not want to move as directed, welcoming the warmth of his sovereign sun to sit deep in his bones. He looked older than he was, felt every bit older too. His massive frame was still imposing, the dark of his eyes still enough to raise alarm when those caught in them. But he was older. The quarry, he felt like an old ship whose timbers were groaning. A ship that had begun to leak in places deep and not easily fixed, perhaps fatally so. People glared at him as he entered the hospital alone and dressed, his flagship business and the one he attended personally. His oldest colt, the one living with his growing family in Manhattan, had taken over almost all the others. Only this one, as cooperative with the farmers, was still truly his own to guide. Corey took the mail from her as they went over the schedule for the day and chatted about any number of things. As they did, he watched the new goldfish circle in the bowl. He tried to remember which incarnation of Bubbles this was. Each succeeding inheritor of the bowl came into their little name. With that, he took his coffee into the small, unadorned office and gave a deep sigh. As he did, he wondered if there was any pony who was aging as poorly as he was. Inside an instant, he got his answer. The bell above the door rang out, a familiar sound causing him to lift his eyes over the schedule. There was not supposed to be anyone in for over an hour. The schedule was mostly bare that day. He ran his hoof through his graying mane and listened for the tone that Paperclip would take as he met whoever had just arrived. To his surprise, it was a happy one. As soon as her muffled voices sung out, he recognized the owner of the other voice as well. With a grunt, he lifted himself from the chair and walked back to the door. As he opened it, he discovered the face of an old friend. A face that was set with deep concern. Eyes that age alone had not sunken sat beneath a faded hat. Corey could see something painful there. Something that seemed to be eating away at Deserved Pony, one of his few close friends. "Go ahead," asked Corey. "What can we do for you, my friend?" The figure of Clyde turned from Paperclip and set Corey with a distant stare, one that actually made the stallion blunt. "Oh, Clyde, hey, Bucko," said Clyde as he held his hat against his chest and wavered on his hoofs. "I am sorry, my old friend, but I have to ask you a favor. In Celestia's name, my old maid. I hate to do it, but I have no pony else to whom I can turn." Corey nodded. With a grunt, he motioned to Clyde with his hoof. "Ain't no shame in asking for help," he said while gesturing over his shoulder. "That's why we have friends. Come in my office, Clyde. Let's get a fix on what's troubling you." The two stallions entered Corey's upstairs office. Lars heard the two sliding into once more in his hard wooden chair with a distinct sound of effort. He began to wish that he switched to soft pillows a long time ago. Thought to himself that any advance it gave to him, have his applicants sitting awkwardly upon the seats, was no longer worth being so uncomfortable. As Corey settled in, he looked Clyde over. Glaring lights of his office, the features of the other proponent came into stark relief. Corey glanced a bit to see how shrunken he appeared, how his mane seemed to be falling out, and how ballooned his stomach had become. He had noticed these things, of course, over the last few years. He hadn't mentioned them out of politeness, and in the hope that not mentioning them would somehow spare him from having to recognize his own growing age. As Corey's eyes met Clyde, an awareness fell through him. It wasn't just age that was doing this to Clyde. There was something more. "Ma Pinky," spoke Clyde as he gave a single tremble. "Corey, she's down. I'm killing her, Corey." Corey glanced again and shook his head. "Clyde," he spoke while his trademark grumble came out of his voice. "What damn were you playing?" Clyde seemed to collapse within himself. Eyes seemed to fall away and stare off towards the horizon. The blank walls of Corey's office hid from all but his perception. "My Pinkie Pie, the one with the balloons as a mark," he began as Corey pictured a bouncy pink pony in his head. "I can't do anything else for Corey, my bucko. She's used me up." For the next few minutes, Corey listened as his oldest friends told him a story, when it slowly revealed the sad truth. Pinkie Pie had remained herself, yet became more so. Clyde spoke of how the farm could no longer contain her powerful abilities, how her laughter had seemed at first to fill them, but it now had overwhelmed them. Clyde spoke of her somehow sensing things, a set of senses that seemed to supersede even her mark, how it had first fascinated them, but now seemed to poise over to come them. As Corey listened, his jaw shifted back and forth. Clyde told him that the other girls, Inky, Blinky, and Maud, who had once reveled in Pinky's abilities as fillies, tired of his young mares. Strife had entered the little white farmhouse, robbing it of joy once echoed through it. She come bounced into the house one day with an advert looking for kumquat farmers down in the Southlands. Clyde said as he wiped his hoof across his forehead, rubbing a raw head. She said that it seemed like fun to say kumquat, so it must be fun to farm the fruits. Oh, my celestial Corey. They sent her back to us. They couldn't deal with her. Our poor dear Pinkie Pie coming off the train a sobbing mess. Corey's jaw shifted back and forth. Clyde spoke of 10 years' worth of trying, doing everything they could think of to help their Pinkamena. The way that they had struggled to find some pony who could help her explore her mark, yet somehow those ponies had all gone pelting off, smeared with frosting. Clyde spoke of the special summer camp for those trying to understand their marks, the way he had gone to pick her up only to find buildings of flame and filled with popcorn. "I can't help her anymore, Corey," said Clyde as he lifted his face back to his friend. "Roxy, the poor suffering wife, she and I can't keep up with her. None of us are so young anymore. She's only getting stronger, seemingly without constraint. Needs some point to lead her on a mark." Clyde gave another shudder, closed his eyes, and looked at Corey with some small horror behind his eyes. "There's not been a chicken hatched at a farm within 12 miles of ours that hadn't had a birthday party for 3 years. 2 days ago, I came home to see her throwing a party for some rocks and a bag of flour, Corey. A bucking bag of flour," wailed Clyde, his curse being the first Corey had heard from him in a long friendship. "Corey, please, I need your help." Clyde spoke again, fixing his sunken eyes upon Corey once more. "She's dying out there on my farm. There's naught I can do for her, and she's suffering for it. I don't know what to do for her." Corey looked at Clyde, saw the very well worry expressed there, the worry of a father for his family. He's more than familiar with it. As Clyde continued to tremble and shake, Corey leaned back and let out a low sigh to escape him. Of course he would help, but how? The pink filly sparkled with exuberance, joy, pottering. There was something he himself wasn't much good at. He thought Paperclip was interested in breaking in a new girl here at the office. His mind wandered what thought parties involved. Balloons, streamers, punts, cakes, kinks. I think I might have something for her. Corey spoke as he nodded to Clyde. But I gotta run it by my son-in-law. As he was, something seemed to settle within Clyde. As though life was returning to him, the possibility itself lifting his broken spirit. A short while later, Corey was trotting through the street once more, this time making for Sugar Cube Corner. He admitted to Carrot long ago he preferred the new name, but when he asked what it inspired, all he got was a few giggles and a blush. He let the matter drop as a knowing look had passed between his daughter and the stallion he had taken Colin's son. He reached the store, skating to a stop across the cobblestones. Corey sighed. He knew he was about to break one of his old rules. Favors. He hated asking for favors. He hated being asked for them even more. Friends mattered, though. So many of the old rules were already dead to him. With that, Corey entered Sugar Cube Corner. There were already a few customers within, as he waited for them to clear. He looked deep within a glass bell jar and studied the eclairs within. He pondered the face of an old gray-mated stallion that stared back down even more. This Corey was a vastly different stallion than mean Corey in many ways. Though a massive frame still stood around him, he knew much of the power had come out of it, and much of his rage with it. He knew it had been replaced with something else, something far more valuable. He saw his own mark, the latter coming out of a pit of rock, reflected in a distant showcase. He thought about how much like his own rock was. It was hard, but he had been pulled up by something. Something that the amber-colored stallion now called to him and helped reveal. "Corey!" called Carrot. "Good to see you. Can I get you something? Let me grab Cupcake and tell her that you're here." "Hold on that thought for a second, son. I need to talk to you for a bit. Oh, and you can wrap me up in a eclair, too," he said, placing emphasis on the first letter of the treat. He rolled the E in a long tone as he lifted his hoof for Carrot, calling him closer. As Carrot wrapped the eclair, he alternated between preparing and listening to his father-in-law, letting entirely what the stallion was asking him to grow upon him. "I have a good friend who's got troubles," said Corey with his low, rumbling tone evident. "One of his faults is growing up strong in their mark. He ain't got no clue what to do. Since the kid's mark is for partying and like, that more often than not leads to eating and such. I thought of you." Corey stopped, shifted his jaw back and forth, let the uncomfortable word prepare itself before dropping it over the room. I'm wondering if you could do me a favor. Do you need an apprentice?" he said with an uncharacteristic stutter. Carrot nodded back to Corey. "Well," he said, "I always wondered what it would be like to have one. I'm certainly not opposed. A friend of yours is a friend of mine. Of course, I'll have to ask Cupcake first, but I'm more than happy to help. I won't say no to a little help around here. Let's have send a cult around and, well..." "Really? More of a young fair, in point of fact," interrupted Corey, looking down at Carrot as the stallion handed him an eclair. An expression wavered across Carrot's face, one that Corey reflected upon as he awaited a reply to the stallion he had taken his family. "Well, I'm not opposed, but I can't bring any pony into this house without Cupcake's opinion. I certainly won't bring a young mare to our home without her saying it's okay. I hope you understand," said Carrot as he looked at his father-in-law. Carrot felt Corey pound him on his shoulder. "You got a way of knowing the right thing to say at the right time, you know that, son?" said Corey with a chuckle. "Don't worry too much. At some point she knows. If there's anything I could do for you, don't be afraid to say so, Carrot." The two turned towards the kitchen and began making for the pantry. Corey heard his daughter humming in the room beyond. Her tone only seemed to have gotten sweeter over the near decade that had passed since these two were married. It almost seemed like her mother's before Wishingwell became ill. As they passed through the kitchen, Corey heard Carrot clear his throat. His hooves, coming to a slow stop across the floors. "Actually," said Carrot once more meeting Corey's gaze, "there is one thing. Something I wondered you would consider doing for me." Corey left Sugar Cube Corner smiling, the big eclair dangling from his mouth in its little bag. There was good news for Clyde. Upon reading the Hospital Loan of Trust, Corey deposited a Claire front paperclip and informed her to cancel the rest of his appointments for the morning. Turning once more out into the street, the big old stallion felt itself becoming slightly winded. What with all the walking he was doing today? He laughed at himself as he turned back down a familiar road, one that led him to his own doorway. Upon entering, he went in quiet host into the living room. There, wishing well sat in front of the fireplace, the space within absent of flames as the warm spring washed through the house. He approached her quietly, though how lonely she looked without grandchildren around her. As he did, he realized that Kara's request certainly had merits. With that, he nuzzled gently. "Darling," he whispered as he touched his nose to her shoulder, leaving a small kiss on her cheek. "Oh, Chloe," came Wishy Well's voice as he awakened from her nap. "Is it that late?" "No, it's hardly even noon. You come home so early."
"Yeah, that's true, darling. That's true,"
he said as he sat in front of her.
"Just had a talk with Clyde, then with the kids. Cupcake carrot, that is."
He grumbled a lot, tried to shake some growing stiffness out of his legs.
"Feels like I've been working all damn day,"
he laughed as he turned back to her. She knew intrinsically that he was asking for in a way that all married couples do. As he kneaded her hose across his back, he told her about Clyde's dilemma, about how Cupcake and Carrot had agreed to take in Clyde's energetic daughter as an apprentice. He told her about Carrot's request, gathering her hose around his shoulders and leaning back to her as he did. After they discussed it for a good long while, they agreed. With that, Corey stood, and together they went off through the streets of Pineville. As Corey pushed his wife through the small city, wheels sounded out happily over the stallion's complaints about all the walking he was asked to do today. Before long, he arrived at a small house, and the stranger that tiny word fell over him. Wishy Well watched Carrot pace back and forth. Corey paced back and forth, knew that conversations of the type were about to take place. It didn't come easy to him. "It's all right, love," she said while reached up to touch her nose to his. "The worst he could say is no, then nothing much will change."
"I don't feel bad for Carrot, though,"
he said as he knocked on the door.
"It's a right proper stallion who puts his mother first."
With that, a surprised cheesecake opened the door to her small home and welcomed him inside. Corey did his best to sit politely as the mayor's talk. They had just seen each other the weekend before. He wondered where they got so much to talk about in such a short period of time. He looked down at the tray before them. Upon it stood a few crackers and slices of cheese. He got the distinct impression it was all the food that was within the house. He looked at the mirrors and wondered how they were aging so gracefully. Well, with Wishing Well being sick and Cheesecake not eating very well. He looked at his mug to take a long sip and cleared his throat. The mayor's looked at him.
Don't mean to interrupt,"
he says he intentionally interrupted.
"but we ain't just here on a social call with cheesecake."
Oh, I'm sorry. I've been going on," flooded Cheesecake's voice, the ethereal tone hovering over the room. "Please, what can I do for you two?" Corey cleared his throat once more and told her the story of his unusual day, exaggerating how much walking he had been doing, and told her that her son had made a request. What did Carrot ask you about?" she asked as she looked to him in his turn. Corey rubbed his hoe through his mane, looked at her over the bridge of his nose.
"Well, Cheesecake, your boy has a powerful word for you, living here all alone. None of us are getting any younger after all," he began.
"He's always so tough on his mother," she said, smiling back to him. "Always been so good to me. But what does this have anything to do with you two?"
"Well, seeing as Wishing Well and yourself get along so well, and I hate having her alone most of the day now, what with the grandkids off at academy and Ruby out of the house most of the day, well..."
Corey cleared his throat.
"Well, Cheesecake, we were wondering if you'd do us the favor of considering coming to live with us in that big old house of yours."
Cheesecake opened her mouth, but no words came. She felt Wishing Well's hose wrapped up in hers. She looked down into the face of her dear friend. "Do consider it, Cheesy. I should love to have you about, and we would be most accommodating." said, wishing well she patted Cheesecake on the hoof. "It'll be so wonderful to have you with us." Cheesecake smiled and laid her head to that of Wishing Well. An hour later, Quarry was grumbling his way back to the streets of the Sugar Cube Corner to tell Cupcake and Carrot the good news. His shoulders went stiff as he did. He returned to his office, leaned back against a chair, for a grand total of 5 minutes before his aches and pains got to him. He told Paperclip to cancel his afternoon appointments, and with that went out to the spring air. Upon his porch was a proper sofa. As Wishing Well dozed nearby in her wheelchair, he put a soft kiss upon her forehead, and lay out its welcome expanse. As the warm breezes tossed his graying mane, he complained to no pony about all the walking that was beating him up. With that, he left his aches and pains behind as he fell into a well-deserved nap. A little voice drifted upon the breeze. "Thank you. You have no idea how important that was." It spoke as it drifted on the breeze. "You cannot know how much that mattered. Thank you, my child. Rest well." Not quite a week later, Karen stood at the top of the stairs doing some light keying, wanting to have Sugar Cube Corner ready for the appearance of their new resident. Behind him and down the hall, Cupcake finished laying linens in the bathroom, the one now especially set aside for their apprentice. Many thoughts went through the two, and spewed fond memories Cupcake had of a pink filly did little to calm Carrot's concerns and answer his questions. As he finished sweeping the upstairs hallway, the bell above the door rang, and he placed the broom aside, knowing at this late hour it could only be their new arrival. He turned to face the stairwell. To his amazement, the sound of excitement seemed to erupt from downstairs. The sudden presence of a new energy was wrapped within it, one that seemed to fly up the stairs above him in its winds. With that, began the third round, the game of this. He trotted downstairs, straining himself as he went. Arriving at the bottom of the stairs, he expected to find some year mare cautiously standing there, perhaps even a little teary-eyed at being away from home. His perceptions were blown away as he witnessed a small stack of suitcases lying jammed in around the door. Inside a showcase storeroom, a form of energy had seemed to have been unleashed. Perhaps some kind of magic spell, or even a natural phenomenon like ball lightning seemed to be bounding around. "So Pinky!" It was only after a moment of contemplation he realized it was a pink mare, one who seemed to be going from stand to stack and back, while naming all the streets in quick succession. "In King Bus, in Outsides, in Macarons, in..." He watched as she seemed to bounce around, seemed to be trying to expand an energy that was cascading through her. He looked on in amazement as he continued to spring from one decorated confectionery to the other. "It's a Fawn Cake, and Black Forest Cake, and Mr. Carrot Cake!" Carrot Cake turned his head to see her looking right at him with a massive smile. "Congratulations! You've been Pinkie Pied." "Oh, hello. Yes, I'm Carrot Cake, and I take it that..." he began. She had one of his toes in hers before she even completed the sentence. She stood there, dancing her rear hose as she seemed to spin him around, trying to sing as she did. "Oh, it's the land of treats and the land of cakes. Oh, I found nothing that beats." As she suddenly stopped, looking warmed and a little defeated. Her expression changed so quickly it startled him. "Oh, I was so stirring here at that time," she said with exasperation. She turned to him again, regaining herself as she once more became happy and vibrant. Another smile went across her face. "Is there a Pinkie Pie?" King Cupcake's voice from the bottom of the stairwell. Her tongue lifting as she set eyes upon a young mare who looked so much like a pink filly who had come frequently with her family to the big house. To her, it was as though she was looking at a beloved little figure that she had babysat, one that exploded into the form of a young mare. Carrot looked upon Pinkie as she leant for Cupcake, seemed to try to nuzzle her and hug her at the same time. "Miss Cupcake! Miss Cupcake!" She called Pinkie as he wrapped Cupcake to tie her. Carrot could not help but smile as these two mares were very new to their acquaintance. As he saw something float through Cupcake that he enjoyed seeing on her face very much. "Oh, actually, dearie, it's Mrs. Cupcake now. Have you met my husband, Mr. Carrot Cake?" asked Cupcake, releasing her hold on Pinkie. "Uh-huh, well, you were dancing, but I couldn't remember the song," Pinkie exclaimed as he bounced around again. Cupcake looked at Carrot quizzically. He simply shrugged his shoulders. Before he could even lower his expression, the pink mare had bounded up to him one more time and now wrapped him in a hug as well. Carrot blushed and tried to think of something to say. Before he could even do so, she was off again, bounding across the room to introduce herself to the pastries. Cupcake and Carrot watched her for a moment, different emotions washing through them. As he went along, their eyes followed her as he seemed to be unraveling a whole new world, one full of excitement and new discoveries, and suspiciously short on comments and periods. And I can learn how to make cakes and cookies and pies, and that's really good because I'm baking pie, and you're carrot cake and cookie cake. Woo! Carrot's eyebrow arched as Pinky seemed to stop in midair and turn to Cupcake. This is your name, a cupcake. It's a cupcake. 2 words. That way you can be Mr. and Mrs. Cake. And then you will be 2 cakes, and then you can make cakes, and I'll make cakes too. That'll be really good. Except for my name is Pie. Think of it as I am Pie. Actually, my name is right. Green Pie too. Not to dwell too much on a point of seeing this family adopting a little girl full of heresy who's actually pink and having to deal with being parents for the first time, but you people should go watch Ultraman Rising. That's just a small advertisement. I just really like Ultraman Rising. As he continued, Carrie turned to his wife and smiled once more. Carrie expected her to share his growing sense of absurdity, since he seemed to be lost in thought. "Hey, bud?" he called, and looked at himself. "No thanks," answered Pinkie Pie. "I'll eat later. I think I should get my things got inside right now." Cookie seemed to shake off her distraction, and watched instead as Pinkie Pie gathered up a few of her belongings. She threw her smile between them as though wondering which would be the first to offer the next bit of excitement. "Come along, dearie," he said as he grasped Pinkie's hoof. "Let me show you to your rooms, and then we'll take the 10-bit tour, righty?" "Okay, darling! But I'll have to pay back 10 bits later," Pinkie answered as he followed Cupcake up the stairs. Cupcake now offered to smile. She looked back down to where Karen shrugged his shoulders, looked at a few more suitcases, and opened the door to see what she had left outside. As he did, something large, cylindrical, and rather unhappy looking stared back at him. He fumbled for the word and fought back to the floor. When he did, his statement sounded out into the street in a politely restrained panic. "Is that a cannon?" After stowing the artillery piece in the downstairs den, he joined them as the tour moved from Pinkie's few new rooms into the bakery as a whole. As they watched, she seemed to launch into convulsion. Shades of panic seemed to wash over Carrot and Cupcake. As soon as they moved to help her, she stopped, looking back at him with a smile. "Oh, Pinkie said, watch out for something falling! Oh, and a door opening too," she said with a smile. Carrot and Cupcake tossed a look between them, not quite understanding what was going on. "Pinkie sense?" asked Carrot. "A door, dearie?" With that, a folding door into the attic came open, lurching down over with a clang and dumping a cloud of dust all over the couple. As they stood out, looking more like ghosts of pies. "Yep," said Pinkie, walking down into 2 distant rooms, appearing to enter one room and come out of it completely different entirely. Pinkie looked up to see the 2 standing there, saw as the door had fallen. Carrot had pulled his wife into him and sheltered together. Pinkie smiled at him as he looked at his foreleg across his face, revealing rosy eyes of something of fond remnants seen to growl. "Oh," intoned Pinkie. "What's it here?" "Oh," said Carrot as his wife gently pressed the dust from his face, just in the act. "No! Let's see. Carrot had gingerly pulled himself up into the attic, bravely going at first into a space not often used by him or his wife. He tripped a few times, the rickety old steps and the broken spring caused to collapse, biting at him as he climbed. A few more items hovered around the entrance to the space. Heartwarming tree ornaments and magical lights, the fans for summer, a box of books containing baby names. And like to the last one, different thoughts going through him as he waited for whichever mare would come up to the lofty space behind him. "What's he doing, Mr. Carrot Cake?" came a voice from out of nowhere. The voice came from behind him, from out of the darkness of the attic beyond. The singular effect caused him to yelp and jump in alarm, fall back down the attic stairs. Pinkie looked down through the trapdoor to see a stunned Carrot Cake walking along in wobbly patterns as Cupcake brushed beside him, ready to steady him as his tongue stuck out the side of his head. Metaphorical birds flew around him. "Pinkie!" Cupcake called out to his surprise. "How did you get up there? You didn't go up the ladder." "I used the stairs at the end of the hall. Sorry about all the old boxes and stuff, but that ladder just looked too safe to me. Like, it looks like you can fall down any second," said Pinkie, stating the obvious. It was a 2 when Rob's face to the second spring broke. earning Carrot's ire. Carrot once again began to climb as Cupcake went off to research Pinky's finding. Carrot, now bruised and dirty, lost Pinky as she jumped, swirled, and cavorted around the open space. Still how happily she seemed to swim in the expanse of the attic. It was as though she longed for a release, a freedom he could not name. He never really thought about the space much. Never seen it as much more than the large, drafty room that stayed far too hot in the summer and too cold in the winter. As he stood by the old fireplace, stuffed tight with old newspapers and bits of insulation, he could only marvel at the freedom she seemed to be experiencing just by being there. He could just be able to expend some of that marvelous energy. "Give over the door, Mr. Carrot Cake," said Pinky. Her voice reached for him as he watched Pinky give another shake. Sweat poured from his brow. He looked to the distant trap door in the static airway, locked in his gaze. Unfortunately, it was the door beside the fireplace that came open. Cupcake got intensely walloping him as he discovered the truth behind Pinky's early discovery. "But get it! It is true!" she said as he fought with the door, not realizing that the mass she heaved and shoved against in frustration was the prostrate form of her husband. "We've been here for all these years, and never knew that the old closet was a stairwell. Why, we can replace the boards and get rid of that nasty trapdoor and we can—" Cupcake looked for him. She turned around at once to see her husband on the floor, with his tongue sticking out of his head. Looking though he had a hard afternoon indeed. As Carrot recovered with his throbbing head, resting on the lap of his wife, the two listened and watched as Pinky continued to dance about the space. As Pinky pulled some insulation away from the windows, she continued to dance to her thoughts. "We have dances up here, it's a parties, and house buffets, you're in and out, and we can—" Pinky began to try to sing again. I'll give her voice happiness. As she did, she once again started to a stop, and her host seemed to skip beneath her. She deflated once more, the failure of her song and dance catching her, making her own magic seem to fade. She turned to look at Carrot and Cupcake, as wondering if seeing how badly she had failed at her attempt. Instead, Pinky smiled. The two sat there once more, covered in dust and cobwebs, that had fallen from the window, beams above where the insulation had been pulled free from the panes and shutters. "Wowie zowie! You just get messy," she said, spitting, once more looking high overhead. "Oh! It's a Kabbalah!" A short while later, a very dirty and dingy Cupcake and Carrot Cake sat in the downstairs living room, one located off the kitchen and den that doubled as the bakery office. Together, they shared the most bracing beverages that they looked to one another with subtle looks of surprise, concern, and hilarity. At once, the Cupcake's ears perked up. Carrot folded her eyes as they looked to the ceiling. Overhead, the sound of hose sounded out. The dull thud of a pony landing on a bed freaked them as the evening dove into the night. A short while later, as some of the beverage was definitely seen to disappear from the decanter, a new sound filled her home and place of business. The sound of a sleeping pony drifted over the house. A pony that suddenly became part of their lives. One that snored rather loudly. The glasses chimed as they touched them to one another. As the little Cupcake tucked herself to a grimy Carrot Cake, they thought about how she had already made them ponder so many things. Yes, they could use the act to host parties. Why hadn't they thought of that? The chance to open their lives to some pony new. It was both exciting and at once terrifying. They were now both covered in dust and cobwebs. Carrot was even slightly bruised. There was a price to pay, they realized. It had not been provided for the labor. There were real issues here, ones that had to be resolved. A cat sat a room away after all. We both wondered how she would react to some basic ground rules. Even as they discussed those rules would be, they somehow sensed that this was another part of the journey of their lives. That they were somehow dealt another hand in the game of this. No matter, it will all work out in the end. There was a new pony in their lives, where all that would evolve. They both knew that they wanted to feel what that was like. A chance to help some pony find their mark, to grow. Overhead, the sound of snoring Pinky fell over them. As they looked to one another, dust toppled from them, and Carrot pulled a fine filament of cobweb from the hair of his wife. Pinky and Diane Pie had, they realized, been in their lives for a grand total of 3 hours. "I knew you wanted kids," Cupcake said in a shiny tone, smirking at him. He laughed and gathered her closer. As he did so, her smirk disappeared in a warm smile as their noses rubbed together for a great long while. With that, they sat in the parlor and finished their drinks, wrapped close to one another as the sounds of the springing insects drifted into their open windows. You know, looking back at all the slices of fics I've done, all the different stories, I've realized that one of my favorite ones to do, besides the funny ones, are the in-depth adventure stories. I just love doing those. Because I always feel like some of these action and hardtail adventure stories are some of the things that really bring out some of the pieces. My second favorite have got to be the familial ones, as I am one who does love heartwarming moments. I guess that's what attracts to me to bringing out those different types of stories. And I guess that's my specialty. Other people go for, well, like Lost, the dark stuff. Other people stick with the shipping, like Scribbler. Me? I stick with the adventure. But hey, that's just me. A guy who's been raised upon anime and comics.